My name is Ziba Hamid.
My name is Anthony Lee.
I'm Stella.
Marjorie.
Andrea.
Amanda.
Well, Resendez.
On your fan.
I asked 20 Stanford students how they got in. Maybe this will give you a better understanding of how somebody gets into Stanford. Maybe it doesn't. One thing's for sure though, these kids are smart as f. All right, I asked them what their stats were, why they believe they got into Stanford, what other universities they got into or rejected from, believe it or not, and something they'd like to tell future kids about applying to college. Let's get into the first question. What were your stats?
I had an unweighted GPA of a 4.0 and a weighted GPA of a 4.76.
Unweighted 4.0 GPA.
3.85 unweighted GPA, 1570 SAT.
GPA was a 4.93 weighted. The SAT, I got a 1520.
4.0 unweighted GPA. I also had a 1590 SAT, 36 ACT, and 5s on all 8 of the AP exams that I took.
3.98 out of 4. SAT was a 1510.
GPA was a 4.0. I also applied test optional.
1600 SAT, 5s on 12 of my APs, and a 4 on the 13th, and straight A's and A pluses throughout all of high school.
I had a 4.0 unweighted GPA, 4.81 weighted. I had a 1580 on my SAT and a 35 on my ACT. I took 15 AP classes, took tests on 10 of them with mostly 5s and a couple of 4s.
What do you think got you into Stanford?
I definitely think it were my rec letters, because one of the main things that my admissions officer talked to me about when I talked to her is that she talked about one of the organizations I started, or clubs at my school I started, and then I was like, I didn't really talk much about that in my application because I knew my rec letter would like say it, so I definitely think they put a lot of weight on my rec letters.
I think my stats definitely helped me get in, but more than that, I was very intentional about how I wanted to present myself. So before I even started writing any applications, before I started writing supplementals or fleshing out my personal statement, I sat down and I took a lot of time to reflect on what kind of person I wanted to come across as. Not just someone who did these things or someone who picked up these test scores, but the actual living, breathing person that I wanted my readers to see me as.
To be honest, I feel like if you meet like the general threshold for grades, that just checks like the grades checkbox. It's really hard to differentiate yourself from other applicants because every student that applies also has good grades, right? So I think that's why I feel like essays are the most important part of your application, especially your personal statement. It's a chance to showcase who you are and really show them why they should pick you over everyone else. For my essay, I really delved into like who I am, my values, the people and the things around me that shape me into who I am. And for a general rule of thumb to keep in mind, just like really showcase your passions, your drive, your initiatives, and just be true to yourself when you're writing them.
I think it was really like my personal aspects of my story. I feel like really like your stats is what just gets you in contention to be able to gain admittance, but the story that you tell, your extracurriculars, and genuineness of like your extracurriculars and the things you write about is really what gets you in.
I think that I got in mainly because of the way that I shaped my application. Most of my essay questions and my extracurriculars were like very cohesive with one another and the major that I was applying for. And I use this like technique across most of my college applications with other schools that I also applied for.
I think my stats definitely helped a lot, but what really was the kicker was my essays. I felt that my extracurriculars were rather weak, but that with my essays I was able to write a narrative that actually made sense and made me feel not just like somebody who was very smart and did some like good stuff in my classes, but also was somebody who was very interesting and did some interesting things outside of class.
But I think for me, the biggest part of my application was fencing. I've been fencing for 6 years now and I'm on the team here. Wasn't recruited for fencing, but I think staying committed to the sport for such a long period of time really shows your dedication and love for something, which I think helped me stand out in my application.
I think the main reason that I was able to get into Stanford was I was a big math competition, math research kid in high school. So I think that helped, but for me, I really tried to show that I was using math to make a real impact in the world.
What I think that got me in was probably the theme of my essay, of like my admissions file. It was pretty cohesive. I had a theme of like global acceptance, talking a lot, creating like welcoming spaces, and also I did trap shooting, which was a pretty unique sport, and I did it competitively and I shot at states.
What other universities did you get accepted to or rejected from?
I applied to 9 schools because I applied to Stanford REA, and I believe I got into all of them. I don't have the exact list, but I remember that I did get into UC Berkeley, UCSD, C Boulder. I got into UC Berkeley early and I received the Regent Scholarship. But for some of the schools, I withdrew my application because I applied REA, University of Washington, Emory University. Yeah, I believe those are just a few of them.
Yale, where I got a STEM likely letter. Columbia, also a STEM likely letter. And then it was Duke, Hopkins, Williams, Emerson, a couple other schools.
So I didn't apply to any other colleges, so don't know if I got into anywhere else or not because I withdrew all my applications.
I also got into UCLA and USC.
I got into Ohio State first, then I got into Stanford REA, and I withdrew all my other applications because I hadn't heard back from them room yet. I was planning to apply to 10 or 15 more schools during the regular round, but since I had gotten into Stanford very fortunately, I decided I was only going to leave in my UC applications and additionally apply to Harvard and MIT and not any of the other schools I had planned. I ended up getting into all 5 of the UCs that I applied to, including Berkeley and UCLA, as well as MIT during the regular decision round.
I did apply to UMich and UC Berkeley, and I got into both. And for UMich, I got into Ross, their business school, with a full ride.
I just applied to UCs. I was dead set on staying in California. I was born and raised here, and I had no intention of leaving, so I just applied to UCs in Stanford. The UCs being Davis, Santa Barbara, San Diego, LA, and then Berkeley, and I got into all of them, and then I got into here, and then ultimately I chose here.
I also got into Northwestern and Dartmouth. Pretty much rejected or waitlisted from all the other schools.
I unfortunately did not actually get into many places. I applied to the UCs and Stanford because I'm from California. I got accepted to UCI, waitlisted and rejected from UCLA, UCSD, and just flat out rejected from UC Berkeley.
Other than Stanford, I got into Duke, UC Berkeley, UCLA, the CS program at UIUC, UMich Ross, and a couple others. I got into Stanford early, so didn't really apply anywhere else. I applied to Harvard for fun, but got waitlisted.
And what would you like to tell future kids about applying to college?
I know it's going to be a stressful time, especially for students who go to like very, I would say like competitive, like cutthroat schools. You've put in all the work and you just have to trust that whatever happens is right for you. And I know that everything will work out for you. And I really hope that you're able to see that as well.
I would probably say that it's really important to craft like a narrative where you're really interested in what you're doing and that the passion shows through the application. And what I mean is like you have to be really excited in what you're doing to be able to excel in interviews and essays and actually have things to write about. So I just feel like do what you really want to do, but also try to sort of find different applications of it. And I think that made me stand out.
I'd say like try your best to create essays that really represent you and be true to yourself. Like don't try to paint an image that's not you. But then I'd also say that circle your application around a certain theme, because then it's like, oh, you're a person with drive and a mission to do something and you're not just doing a bunch of stuff just to do it. But yeah, stay true to yourself. Don't stress out too much. You'll get into a place that's right for you, and good luck.
Just give yourself some grace. This whole process is very stressful and it will work out in your favor in the end. Even though it may not seem like that, even with the results out and everything, it will work out in the end. And I believe wherever you're supposed to go, that's where you're supposed to be, or things change. But I just promise you everything will work out in the end.
The biggest piece of advice I can give is to start super early. It's something that everyone says, but you really don't realize it until you're in the midst of the process yourself, because not only are you balancing all these dozens of supplementals, so many drafts of your Common App, all these applications you have to fill out, all these college chores are going on, but you also have all the normal responsibilities of being a high school senior. And it's a tough 6 months, but it's worth it. You'll grind through, you'll push through, and then after that you'll have the best second semester of your senior year.
Don't stress, don't worry, everything happens for a reason. And just be yourself when you're writing these essays and everything will work out in the end.
Obviously focus on your stats, your GPA, your SAT, but to a certain extent, if you're above maybe 1450, 1500, you're honestly fine for SAT. You don't need to maximize everything. You don't need to get a 1600. I think once you get to a certain point, there's a SAT, ACT, GPA, you're in contention, and what's going to set you apart at that point is your extracurriculars and how unique you are, how genuine you are.
Be really authentic in the voice that you use when you're writing your essays. I think that when you're telling your personal story, you should really emphasize the things that you've learned or the things that you struggled and how that made you a better person and how that's going to make you a good student.
The reason that I feel I did so poorly during the UC admissions process was that I was just doing it all alone. I was just writing my essays in my room and submitting them without having anybody look over them. Whereas for my Stanford essays, I actually learned from my mistakes and had several of my friends who were upperclassmen at T20 schools looking over my essays, making sure that my narrative made sense. And I think that was the real difference that got me to Stanford. That definitely would be my advice to any high school students applying next year. Definitely get more eyes on your admissions process, on your essays, on everything that you do, that you have a coherent narrative that you can present to the admissions officer.
Really just start early. You probably hear this super often, but that's because it's true. For my Stanford essays, I probably had 7 or 8 different drafts, which took me a couple months to write. And if you're doing that for 10 or even up to 15 schools, that's going to take a lot of hours. So please get started early, use your time over the summer and during the first semester of your senior year.